I'd like to officially call this meeting to order at 7 o'clock. First item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda.
So moved.
So we have moved and supported. Any additions or deletions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
6.
Sorry, 6-0. I'm used to saying 7. Soon to be 7, right? Item number 2 is public requests or comments. Pretty quiet out there tonight. Nice. So seeing none, we will move on to the main agenda items. So I guess just to start out, everybody's going to have about a half hour of questions. We're going to ask everybody the same questions. They've been prepared and they are being asked in a random order, meaning the questions that weren't necessarily from each board member, but from a pool that we all took a group from and got a name on. We'll go around. We'll have 30 minutes. The original set of questions is just 6, so you can feel free to elaborate as much as you want because there's a lot of time. If we have some time left, there's a couple of follow-up questions or people might have some other things that were not on the original list, and we'll go from there. And then we'll try to wrap it up within 30 minutes. I guess so from board members, any questions?
Just quickly, if I could say thank you to the board and the staff and the people coming tonight to talk about the school board position, because this is not something I guess we normally do, but it's good for the process. And since I made the motion, I've kind of felt a little burdened by that, but we did support. So point is, thanks everybody for making this happen. It's a good thing.
Yes, I agree. We got 3 really, really good candidates tonight, and I'm looking forward to hearing from each of them. So I guess with that, we will get rolling.
Sounds good.
We're a little early, so Matt, if you'd step out, and Dr. Lark, you're on the hot seat. Come on in. So let's write down. I got here. I have an extra piece of paper. You'd like to grab, or you can use if anything there is fine. All right. Again, just to reiterate, I'd like to really thank you for going through this process. When we first started this, I'm not sure we thought we'd get anybody, given the times that we were in. But we got a really good pool of people and have narrowed it down to 3, and then 3 excellent candidates. And so it's great to have you here tonight, to be able to meet you and actually hear from you in person. And with that, I will start out. Steve, you're up.
All right. Good evening, Dr. Lark. In the challenging times that we're facing this year, why have you decided to be a part of the decision-making process?
Because of the challenging times that we're in. I've actually wanted to run for something for a very long time. Most of my life, though, the last 20 years, I've been in academia. I was either in grad school preparing to be an academic, or I was a professor. And if anyone here has been in academia, and I know at least a couple of them have, there's no time for anything else. And I was often told by people who had power over me that I had no time for anything else. And that I was just going to have to tell my family that you have to be working all the time because that's all there is time for if you want to be a successful academic. It turns out I didn't want to be a successful academic because I care about a lot of other things. And my husband always used to joke with me that, you should go into politics or something if you care about this stuff so much, because I was constantly like, can we talk about X, Y, or Z thing that's happening in the world? So I left academia at the end of 2019, or in the middle of 2019. We moved down here because I decided I was going to be a farmer. And I took some time off for myself. So we moved in 2019 and got here in July. And as we were setting up and I'm trying to start a new business and stuff, the pandemic hit. So that sort of took any plans I had for getting really involved in the community off the table. So I spent the last couple of years not really getting to know the community too well, except for some people online. And when the vacancy came up, I was like, oh man, this is my chance to do something like what I've been thinking about doing for so long. And I do think that given the crazy amount of stuff that's going on in the United States right now, it pushes me even more to want to serve, because I do care about a lot of the issues that are going on. Pretty much everything that's going on right now, I have some sort of opinion about. And I want to be able to represent people who don't normally get to come to these things and stand up and speak at the mic. Maybe because for various reasons they don't feel comfortable doing so. Maybe I can help to bridge that gap and help their voices be heard. I don't think I'm very intimidating, so. So it's a combination of just being now at a point in my life where I'm able to take on some of that challenge and really start to do something and be an active member of the community.
Okay. Perfect. Christopher.
Okay. How do you feel the school district can improve the academic achievement of students and the professional development of the staff?
The first thing I would really need to do is to look to see where we are. I haven't really done that for Mason. I've spent more time really focusing on my own daughter. She's 13 in 8th grade here. But before I would suggest any changes, I would have to see where we are. So take stock in what kind of professional development the teachers are already getting. And then I could make recommendations for what additional or other kinds of professional development we might bring in, given the kinds of experiences I've had giving professional development to teachers. I also want to look at how the school is performing on, local and national tests. Although I do have certain thoughts about those kinds of tests, but I also have a lot of experience with developing curriculum and assessments, and I would like to see how student achievement is being assessed, and then we could go from there to see what is the validity of some of the things that we're doing, and how else might we bring in some other ways of doing things that are maybe more in line with the research, if that makes sense. So the first thing I would need to do is establish a baseline before coming up with any further recommendations.
Michael?
What qualities, skills, and experiences would you bring to the board?
Wow. So I've had a very non-linear trajectory out of the gate. I started wanting to be a biologist. So I went to Oakland University and got my degree in biology. And from there was gung-ho. I was going to go be a researcher and go to Yale or whatever. So I went to Michigan State to get a degree in zoology, and I was studying the evolution of cannibalism in salamanders. It was really cool. But it was also not life affirming, and I was in the basement of Nat Sci looking around at my salamanders eating each other and thinking I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. So it was at that point that I was I need to make a change. That said, I developed a lot of really cool skills like dissecting tiny newt brains and stuff that I don't know if that's ever going to become something that I can use again, but I mean, it's there. I got it. So then I switched over to education, got into the PhD program at MSU, and that was exactly where I needed to be. But I was a person who was coming from the sciences. I was not coming from education. I was the only person in my cohort that had not been a teacher prior to going to that program. So I had a little bit of I was intimidated, and I felt like I had a lot to prove because, gosh, all these people are coming in and they've got experiences I don't. Until I understood that, I also have experiences that they don't. So my grad school experience sort of became this straddling this divide between education and science and making the two connect. And that's what I ended up doing for my dissertation, I was able to do a project that brought together evolution and education into a single project. So another skill is that I'm pretty good at integrating different aspects of a project and bringing them together. I'm also really good at working with groups of people who are from different disciplines or parts of the world. I've worked on several different interdisciplinary teams that have had scientists and science educators and teachers and students. So all different people, and bringing all those voices together to bear on something that makes it a lot better, whatever project we're working on. I also think I'm pretty good at distilling the nature of the ideas that we're all bringing forward and finding ways to make them work for the group, if that makes sense. So I'm also just really good at reading and writing. I've done a lot of grant proposals. They didn't all get funded, but the smaller ones did. So I've got that going for me. And this is going to sound weird and hackneyed, but I am kind of a people person, so I like getting along with people. I like meeting lots of new people. And I'm weird and jokey and probably not to my benefit, but I make jokes a lot, and especially when I get nervous. So, so yeah, I know, right? I try to smile with my eyes, so.
Okay, the next question comes from me, and hello and welcome. The question is, identify a recent board decision that you felt strongly about and describe how you would balance community concerns, student needs, state and federal law, staff considerations, and your personal values and beliefs to determine how to vote on the issue. And I can repeat that, or actually
Yeah,
hand you this.
I'm going to write down
I can
some of
hand you
this.
this question if you'd like. Identify a recent board decision that you felt strongly about and describe how you would balance community concerns, student needs, state and federal law, staff considerations, and your personal values and beliefs to determine how to vote on the issue.
So first and foremost, I have to put my personal values last. I can't take them off the table completely because they are who I am. So I view the world through a lens that is shaped by my community, my political beliefs, my values. But at the same time, I can consciously try to be as objective as possible when looking at a decision that needs to be made. It's really hard. Even as a scientist, science is not 100% objective, but we do the best that we can. As far as community, students, the law in general, and staff, you want to hear from all of those voices because they're all important. The law we have to stay within, so we don't want to run afoul of the law if we can help it, which means that we all need to be aware of what the law says. And so knowing where to go to find that. In terms of a recent case, I will be honest that I wasn't following the board's decisions before the decision that sort of brought me here, which was the mask issue. My husband and I were watching that because it was something that concerned us quite a bit because my daughter had spent the entire prior year being online, and she had been vaccinated, fully vaccinated, but she hadn't been when we had to decide what we were going to do back in May. We had to say whether she was going to go to school full time. And we were like, probably she's going to be vaccinated by then because of what we were hearing coming from the news and from science, CDC. But so we made the decision to send her back. Then the Delta variant came up, as we all know, and things we didn't feel as confident in that decision. So we started to revisit things, and we were concerned with some of the news that we were hearing across the country about schools that were starting weeks before ours and their cases starting to go up because there were no mask mandates. So it was definitely a concern. We weren't really sure what we were going to do. I actually got interviewed by someone from The Atlantic that was weird, but about my opinion on that. So I definitely, again, personalized, I had an opinion, and my opinion was very strong because my daughter is the world to me, and I didn't want her getting sick. Also, my husband and I are at a higher risk category, so we didn't want her bringing home something and us getting sick. So this was something that was super important to my family and I. The frustrating thing there is that there's no law, right? There was no law that said you had to mandate, that there had to be a mask rule. In some states, they've actually made it so you can't make a law. And it is different state to state because of the 10th Amendment, right? So that makes it a little bit stickier because you don't have someone out there at the higher level telling you this is what you have to be doing. That really does put it into the hands of the board and the lower level legislatures, if you will, what you're going to do. So at that point, you have to start listening to what the community says, but also to go back to the community, from what I gathered, at least in Mason, it's been pretty 50-50 on the mask issue. I talk to people, and about half of them are like, yeah, we want to wear masks all the time, and the other half are like, no way. It's probably the same with students too. I mean, the students probably don't really want to wear masks. My daughter is probably the exception where she's like, you cannot take the mask off my face. I will wear it as soon as we leave the house every day. But because there was nobody telling the board what to do, it was a decision that everybody had to come together to make. And that's a hard decision because of how politicized it's become, and because it's uncomfortable, et cetera. So in that case, you have to listen to what people say, but also you really have to think about what does the science say. And in terms of the science, I err on the side of listening to the CDC, because they are the platinum standard for information on healthcare in our country. And CDC recommended wearing a mask. So I would say if it had been me and making that decision, my recommendation would also have been to say, I recommend wearing a mask. They also recommend vaccination, but that's not something that you can force. So I would also recommend getting vaccinated before I have people come back. So I guess the hard part is making the decision to mandate it, and that comes down to, do we think that children are going to make the best decisions for themselves? And I think the case there is not necessarily. We have all kinds of rules here at the school, right? So in that case, we're going to have to institute one more rule for them to abide by until we get better information, at which point then we can revisit the decision we've made with all of the information we have, to see if it merits changing the decision. So I agreed with the decision that was made to require masks in school buildings based on all of the information that we had at the time. And I think that it was a good decision because I still continue to follow the news like a rabid badger, and the cases are still going up in other parts of the United States, particularly places where there are more unvaccinated people. So it looks like I understand that it's hugely contentious, but at the same time, I'm not willing to take a risk like that with our community and with our kids. So maybe we're being overly cautious. I don't care. I want to keep people safe. So in that sense, that's where I came down on that issue. I guess that is my personal beliefs coming at the end, but for me, this, it's a big deal, keeping people safe. So for things that aren't so, emotionally wrought, the decisions probably won't weigh so heavily on how I feel personally, but I do think it is important to bring in not only public comment, but also hear from the staff and the students what they think. And I haven't I don't know what the staff and the students think here, and I don't know what your process is for going through and hearing from those folks too. But I would hope that you do have some sort of channel that allows them to do that.
Thank you.
Sorry, that was really long-winded.
Hi. What do you think are the most important skills for students to have when they graduate?
Oh, thank you for asking this. They need to have adulting skills, which is, when I went to school all those years ago, I took like home ec, and I learned how to sew, and I learned how to cook. And gosh, I wish someone would have told me how to like balance a checkbook, even though we don't really do that these days. But we did have classes about like woodworking classes and stuff like that to teach us how to be able to be self-sufficient when we leave the house. I have noticed since I left school that a lot of that stuff has been whittled away, and I understand why. Especially when we have stuff like No Child Left Behind and the focus on standards-based education, and so much of our money is going to be dependent upon how our kids perform on state and local tests. A lot of that extra stuff gets thrown out the window because we want to focus everything on preparing them to take those tests, right? Because they're really important. To the point where like there have been cases of fraud where people working at the school have come in and like, erased the bubble sheets to make sure that the kids were performing better on these tests because their jobs were on the line and funding for the school was on the line. So during the age of No Child Left Behind, I've seen a lot of those extra classes that sort of teach some of those life skills going away. When I look at my daughter's course classes, it's math and science and ELA and social studies, and maybe she takes band, so there's a little bit of extra. I don't know if the school offers things like home ec. I see that there was a home ec classroom, so that probably was offered at one point. But it just feels like a real shame that some of those skills have been, they're not being conferred to the kids. And I can also say that as someone who taught young people in college, they really are starting, like, you could see that they were lacking those skills as they got older. Like how to cook and how to like do your freaking laundry, stuff like that. So these are things that I think, in addition to the core general education, which is super important, we still need to have opportunities for kids to engage in the kinds of things that they're going to need to do to function as an adult. So I don't know how we do that because there still is a lot of pressure from funding agencies and from local and federal testing to do well on those tests. There have to be ways, and maybe it's just community engagement with the kids to get them the other skills that they need. Or an easier way would just be to create curricula that bring those skills into their core classes. They might do this a little bit with learning how to use measuring cups and stuff in math class. That's actually a great place to bring in an opportunity for kids to learn about cooking, and there's the chemistry of cooking and stuff like that too. So, adulting skills, and then finding ways for students to have those that may not be as obvious as like having a home ec course or having a they used to have like work on cars and stuff when I was in school. So either making those opportunities available to kids outside of school, or finding ways to bring them into the curriculum so that they're still learning the core stuff, but then also getting these other skills that have been whittled down over time. Oy.
Okay, I've got a question here. This is one that we have faced a lot lately. Describe your response if a parent corners you at the grocery store and asks for your support for a particularly hot issue. How do you handle that?
Well, I'm going to first try to diffuse the situation and say, can we not talk at the grocery store? Like, let's meet a time to meet up and talk somewhere else. And I do think it is very important not to brush someone off like that. You do need to sit in there and meet with them. So, invite them over to my house, or we go to a coffee shop or something. But I'm finding a place a little bit more appropriate, given that everyone's got stuff to do and it might not be the best time. If they can't meet somewhere else, I would just invite them to give me a call or send me an email or something. But I probably would not engage right in that moment. If we're not even going to go there, we're going to say that they're totally nice and respectful. So that said, I would make them aware before we start discussing that if you are bringing your issue to me, that's fine, and I'm glad to hear it, but I'm not promising you anything, because I'm not the only person who makes a decision, right? It has to go to the whole board. That said, I'm happy to bring concerns to meetings and report back to the group. These are the kinds of things I'm hearing out there, right? Without my personal spin on it, because it's not appropriate to put a personal spin on something that somebody's told me, right? Yeah. So I want everyone to know that, I love engaging with people individually, and I invite that, but I'm not making any promises about anything, because once you get back to the whole group, it's out of your hands anyways, right? It's not one person's decision. But I do think it's important to, if you're out and about town and you hear what people are saying, to bring that to the rest of the group so that everyone has a pretty good idea of the kinds of things that people are discussing. That said, I would love to hear stories about what happens when you guys get cornered at the grocery store.
It happens.
Yeah, I imagine so.
Well, that's each of our kind of first round of questions. We've got maybe 5 minutes to go here. If anybody,
6 minutes and 30
6 minutes.
Oh, there is a clock. I didn't see that over there.
Little over 6 minutes.
Okay. We have 6 minutes left. So anybody have a follow-up they'd like to put out there?
If we were to ask a follow-up, does it need to be the same follow-up for each? Okay.
It's always best to keep the
Okay,
questions the
okay.
same across everybody, just
Okay.
for baseline.
All right, this
Yeah.
will be a very grandiose one. Why out of the three high caliber people that are coming to speak to us tonight, why are you the one for our school board? Why should I vote for you?
So I actually kind of prepared for this. So I know that you don't know me. You know the other two people. That was pretty clear from the last meeting. And I totally get why you would pick somebody that you know really well. That actually makes perfect sense, because you know that you work really well with them. They're familiar with how things work. And you're going to get along. You have to work with this person for 18 months or so. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That said, I'm a person who comes from, my whole background's in education. I've not only done the research and published a book-length paper about that research, I've worked really closely with students and with teachers, especially teachers. And I feel like over the years I've gotten a really solid feel for what teachers, how they feel and what they need. I understand the kinds of flack that they get. I understand that they're not treated particularly well by some members of the community. I know teachers don't get summers off, for instance. I've heard people say, like, well, it must be nice to not have to work summers. Yeah, teachers are working summers. They're not working with the students necessarily, but they are working their butts off, bringing new technology into the classroom. They are going to conferences to present research that they've done that a lot of the times they don't get credit for. They are going out and learning new techniques, bringing it into the classroom. Everything that they're doing is to make their own teaching better for the kids, because they care. I see across the United States right now, there are several teacher prep programs that have closed at universities, mostly smaller universities, but some major ones. I had to leave my position at Michigan Technological University because they closed my division. The program where I helped to prepare people to become teachers is gone. that program is gone. The professional development that they got is gone. That particular program served the entire western side of the UP. So now Northern has a great program, but it wasn't our program. And so now they're going to have to take on the challenge of trying to have people who want to stay in the UP and serve that community. One of the reasons why I loved being up in the UP was because it was a very underserved community. You don't think about it being that way, but it is a very rural, impoverished community. So it was a huge blow when they shut that program down. Also because I had to leave, and I had to leave a lot of people behind. So we're losing these programs across the United States, and the reason for that, or the reason for that is because there aren't as many people going into teaching. People aren't going into teaching because they've been convinced that teaching sucks, because teachers don't get paid anything, because teachers are treated like garbage, and a lot of the times they can be. I've met teachers who've been treated very poorly. Teaching is not a calling, it's a job. And so people who teach need to be fairly compensated for the work that they do, and the work that they do is amazing. I mean, there is no other job besides parenting that kids get to see more, right? We spend years and years of our lives watching teachers do what they do. And so most people come away from their schooling thinking, I know exactly what goes into teaching. I know exactly what teachers do. And they have no idea. They have no idea what goes into preparing a teacher, what kinds of things they have to do to maintain their certification, the work that they do every single night. Most people have no idea. But there's still this idea among lay folk that anybody can teach. It doesn't take much to be a teacher. So if anybody can do that job, why would we spend more money on these people? Why would we value them more? And that really gets under my skin. So I made the decision to go from science to education because I care about teachers. I was hoping that I thought I could have a bigger effect on the community by working with teachers rather than being a teacher myself. So that's why I went into teaching teachers. And I love that work, and it kind of breaks my heart a little bit that I don't get to do it now. Being on the board would allow me to continue some of that work, I think. But also just what we're doing here, I think, is making you aware of me. And frankly, that's enough. Because even if I don't get the spot on the board, I'm still going to run in 2022. But I want you to know who I am. I want you to know what I stand for. I want you to know that I'm really passionate about teachers and students and helping them to learn and making Mason a better place. And I'm here, and I hope that you'll reach out and make use of me. That's all.
Great. Thank you very much for your very honest and passionate answers and making your presence known tonight. And if you obviously, we'll have a lot of discussion afterwards to try to figure this out. But one way or another, definitely hope to see your name on the ballot. So with that, again, thank you very much. I think that's it for this slot.
Mrs. Hinman has let the next candidate know. I said Mrs. Hinman has let the next candidate know. So.
Welcome, Mr. Hall. How are you doing tonight? Good. So we've got about 30 minutes with you. We have some prepared questions, same questions we've had for each of the candidates. We're going to start with 6. Each of us will have one question, so that's kind of the baseline. So feel free to elaborate and talk at will. I mean, we have plenty of time to get through 6 questions. A little time left. We'll maybe have a follow-up or 2. And with that, I guess I turn it over to Steve.
Good evening, Mr. Hall. In the challenging times that we're facing this year, why have you decided to be a part of the decision-making process?
Great question. That's I've fielded that from a number of family members recently, honestly. To be glib, honestly, I'd rather be making the decisions than having been made for me. It's something I've been in a professional career where we make challenging decisions all the time, and they're impactful decisions. And how could you be more impactful than your community public education program? So it's something I've been involved in for 5-6 years now, since the bond initiatives in 2016, 2017, 2018. Invested in that. I want to see that continue to go forward. It's challenging time. You're right. One of the things that can ease those challenges is having a consistent voice. I've been involved for years now, and I'm going to keep involved, whether I'm the successful candidate tonight or not. But that consistency, the understanding of some of the steps that got us to where we're at now, and while they're not COVID, we're not planning for COVID challenges, but the rest of those kind of challenges will help dampen that impact as we go forward for the next, hopefully 10, 12 months, not extending on that, as we get through these current challenges on the global health scale.
Thank you. Christopher.
How do you feel the school district can improve the academic achievement of students and the professional development of the staff?
Again, consistent improvement is going to be a great goal to get to. I think one of the silver linings in the last 12 to 18 months in COVID has been introduction of more technology. We're talking to an audience now virtually. In a professional career, most of us, I can't speak for everyone, but I mean, most of us have experience with interface that's not person to person. And as we work towards staff development and improving curriculum and training and such like that, we can lean on that technology gains.
Michael?
What qualities, skills, and experience would you bring to the board?
So, quality, skills, and experience bringing to the board really is I've got, going back 20 years, my undergraduate degrees in engineering. I went to law school. I practice as an attorney now for a large corporation. It's problem solving. It's whether it's thermodynamics or administrative law, it's about identifying what the issues are, what your parameters are as you address those parameters, what the tools you have in front of you, making them work, go forward. In particular, my last 8 to 10 years of professional experience has been involved in stakeholder groups, negotiations, large corporate decision-making process that impacts number of employees and then also the general public as a whole. You don't go through those kind of experiences in a professional life and not be able to bring some of that to this volunteer service here. Certainly not the same issues. They're impactful with, again, you're talking about the youth, our students in this community. But I got a lot of training, got a lot of experience as we go forward to do that stakeholder group negotiation, active listening, effective communication as we go into adverse parties. We have a divided community. We're not the only community that's divided right now. It's going to take a lot of those skills. Again, active listening, effective communication as we go forward, because there are some challenges still up ahead. And then outside of the health challenges here, we have a number of other, emerging issues that we've been dealing with for the last 6 to 8 months, and they're going to go forward in the future. So the combination of training and experience, and then community involvement, going through some of get a taste of that community involvement with the bond initiative, and the push for that campaign, the school study committee. It's a good experience to really help this body.
I'm your next question, and it's a long one, so I'll repeat it if you need it. And I'll try and read it slow for myself more than for you. Anyway, the question is, identify a recent board decision that you felt strongly about and describe how you would balance community concerns, student needs, state and federal law, staff considerations, and your personal values and beliefs to determine how to vote on the issue. And again, I'm happy to repeat that, if you'd like me to.
So the question, as I heard it, was what a recent board decision feels strongly about, and how to balance those myriad of issues to vote as an effective member of the board.
Balance that
Yep.
to determine how to vote, yes, on the issue.
We sat in City Hall 20 months or so ago with a robust ongoing discussion on reproductive education. And it's one that the board voted for, and I didn't agree with it. I understand why the board voted that way. But I think that they were, in my terms, maybe balancing some factors that I didn't weight as much. It was not an easy decision, and it's not one that I don't think is. There's no ill intent was behind it. But as you say, you feel strongly about certain things, then you have to go through and balance what the statutory impacts are, what the statutory language, what the regulatory language are, what your community values are, and how they express it. You have to balance that public community input, but be careful and not to just listen to the loudest voice in the room, right? So there's a number of things, and it's a difficult decision. It's not the only difficult decision this board faces. And then you look into, and I didn't even hear a whole lot on the public. I heard some of the teachers speak about this. Is then you make a policy as a board and work with that administration to have it brought down to the staff level, and they're the ones who have to implement it or enforce it, whether it's a diversity or anything like that. Then you have this reproductive education issue that the board voted on. The staff may feel strongly one way or the other. Some of them certainly agreed with the decision made. Some of them probably didn't agree with the decision made. And they're fielding questions from students now. And so the board would still have to set those policies up and set parameters for that conversation in there. And it's a long way around saying, you got to be effective communicators. Again, you listen to what's being said in public comment, right? Where the board is the nexus, that intersection point between the community and between the administration, and then balance what your oversight is from the government, what those laws, what those regulations say. It's that nexus in there. So you've got to be that effective communicator. And you have to be consistent with your approach on how you communicate and then how you disseminate that information as you go forward here. Again, it's not something you can come into really quickly. You have to do the homework. You can't just show up at a meeting, open up your Chromebook and say, oh, what are we talking about today? So, it's do your homework, effective listen, respect people, be transparent, and make your decision.
Thank you.
All right, I'm up. What do you think are the most important skills for our students to have when they graduate?
Students need to learn how to learn. It's something I struggled with, frankly. I went through high school, 25 to 30 years ago. Scary to say that, but it's true. And I breezed through high school. I got to college and I was like, my eyes were opened a little, right? Because I could just memorize everything and go through there. I didn't know how to learn a new subject. And so it's not just looking at a diagram of a frog, no matter how cool it is in biology when you're actually dissecting labs. But they have to learn how to actively learn. So the emphasis needs to be not on rote memorization. It needs to be on Socratic questioning. It needs to be on logic-based thought processes. They have to learn how to learn. And that's not, from what I see, emphasized in traditional curriculum. There's some push towards it. The STEM education or STEAM education programs are pushing more towards that interactive, ongoing learning process. But I'll go back to it. The short answer is students need to learn how to learn, because education doesn't stop at high school.
All right, thank you. Something that we've all faced a lot, I think, recently, more than usual. Describe your response or how you respond if a parent corners you at the grocery store and asks for your support for a particularly hot issue.
That doesn't really happen, does it? Where's the door again? I mean, so yeah, we live in a community that's, you know, it's fairly tight knit, and like we said, it's fractured, it's divided. Every community in the United States is divided right now. I can't speak for global, but I mean, it's there. So you are gonna, I joke about it, but yeah, that's gonna happen, whether it's at a soccer game or whatever else. And then so in my opinion, for someone to approach me as a potential servant of the public administration of the schools, they've obviously have to have a real concern. It's really got to bother that person, that parent. And so you can't be dismissive. You have to validate that conversation. It takes some gumption to approach an elected official in this case, appointed elected. So it's respectful, and to validate the fact that yes, parent, you know, I'm a parent too of a school of the students. You have a real concern, and then it's a trade-off, right? We're sitting up here as the decision makers, so we owe that parent, that community member, a little bit of time. And if you don't owe that time, you probably owe them a little contact information follow-up. But it's respectful. It's being transparent. There are certain things that I can and can't do in this conversation right now, Mr. or Mrs., you know, parent. I understand what your concern is. I have provided an email address and contact. If you want to further, you know, elaborate on that, send me an email, please. We'll have some follow-up conversations. But it really comes down to a respect thing. To be open, respectful, understand that a concern is valid, whether or not you personally agree with that concern or understand the logic behind that. That parent does. And so you can't just be openly dismissive of it. You have to engage. But I will say, you do have to be very understanding on what the policies are and what you can and can't say. You can be non-committal, and that's obviously a restraint that would have to be open there. It's one I use a lot in my professional life. You know, we may be talking about an issue right here, but this is not, you know, advice from in-house counsel. You can't, you know, you can't rely on this. We may be pontificating on something right now. There's some parameters in place right now, and we're going to have that conversation. But the authority isn't there for me to make a decision or something. So.
Great, thank you. That's kind of the first round. We got quite a bit of time left, so
This
go ahead.
was
Follow
not
up.
one of our questions, but it was like an offer to the board to ask another question. We will ask this of each, since I asked it of our first person. So here's the question. Out of the three high caliber candidates we have that we'll meet with tonight, why are you the one? Why should I vote for you?
It goes back to I think the first question I asked Steve is I've had a presence here. I've been involved with weighty decisions that affect the community and affect the board and affect the administrators for 4 to 5 years now. You know, there's some who say, you know, you haven't seen me on camera for the YouTube stuff. We've called in. You know, I've taken that remote option, which is entirely appropriate and it's something we should be looking at maybe potentially going forward. I think it's a great silver lining here, the engagement in the public. But you should vote for me because in the times that we have right now, there's a consistency that I can offer because I've been involved in decision making with this board before. I've presented to this board before. We've taken advantage of public comment on other issues in this board before. And that is going to serve the community and it's going to serve Ron and his staff as we get through the next 12 to 14 months before we can have a general electorate. That's why you should vote.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks. Other questions that I guess at this point that people would like to ask or have answers or other items? Anybody?
The penalty for speaking quickly.
Yeah. Okay, well, I guess that would conclude this interview. And again, I would like to sincerely thank you for being here and for answering the questions and honestly and transparently and, you know, for stepping up during a time when a lot of people wouldn't. So we do appreciate that. I can't tell you how much we appreciate the caliber of people that we get to talk to tonight. So
Yeah, it's a good candidate pool.
Yep. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Michael, can you hear us?
We cannot hear you.
You're muted. Or we've got you turned off. What's that?
I know what it is. It's my bad. It's all right. Should be all good now.
Try again.
Can you hear us, Michael? Yep, you're still not coming through our speaker. Hold on here for a second. I think it's on our end.
Is the volume on the TV turned up?
These speakers turned on down here in front of us?
Yes, they should be.
You can hear us, right? Yep.
You can hear us.
That works. Say something now, Michael.
Can you hear me?
We can. We got you.
All right.
Well, thanks for being with us here tonight. Hopefully you haven't been watching for the last hour. And the kind of the format we have here tonight, Michael, is about 30 minutes of time. And we're going to start out with 6 questions, one from each of us, kind of a round robin. And like I said, just 6 questions to start out, so feel free to elaborate as much as possible because we have plenty of time. And if we get to the end of those 6, there might be 1 or 2 more follow-up.
To start out, so feel free to elaborate as much as possible because there's plenty
I'm
of
getting
time.
feedback in me.
If we get to the end of those 6, there might be 1 or 2 more follow-up. To start out, so
I don't know.
We can't hear him right now. That's the way.
Okay. Got it.
okay.
All right, can you hear me at this point? Michael, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, I'm sorry, we're getting feedback coming across your speaker. Hopefully it'll be good now. So did you kind of hear my introduction, or you did? Okay.
I did.
Perfect. Okay, so we will get going here. We can start the clock, and Steve, you start us out.
All right. Good evening, Mr. Coate. Steve Dwayne here. In the challenging times that we're facing this year, why have you decided to be a part of the decision-making process?
Because our community needed somebody with professionalism, logical thinking, strategic planning, and also somebody who I believe can get along with all 6 of you. From my observations of board meetings over the last 1.5, 2 years, I think I can help. And that is why I applied for this position, because there's a tremendous need with Mr. Beebe resigning. And I thought, I can be somebody that criticizes from the sidelines, or I can actually get involved. And that's what I chose to do.
Thank you.
Okay, Michael, I'm next. This is Christopher. How do you feel the school district can improve the academic achievement of students and the professional development of the staff?
Well, that's a challenging question, right? Because I don't know everything that's behind the curtain. I would say the first thing that I would bring is I am not afraid to innovate. Everything that I've done in my career has been about just innovating and doing it differently. So when I started teaching, I had an overhead with transparencies, and I quickly realized that wasn't going to work. So I went to PowerPoint and using digital assets well before many of my did that all through my teaching career, pushing the boundaries of, okay, I can teach this way, it's sort of this traditional format. What else is out there? So I tried a flipped class and a hybrid class and really just kind of questioning what is normal and traditional. I've done that in my current role with McGraw-Hill in terms of, okay, we've always done it this way. How can we rethink this in a digital age? And I think that's sort of something that is one of my skill sets. It's just being innovative and looking at problems from a different direction. So the first thing I would have to do is do some research, right? Do some research on how we're doing as a district in terms of meeting academic requirements, and start asking questions. Ask them to you as board members and to the superintendent and to other administrators to kind of better understand where we are. I'm not going to pretend that I know that right now at this point, but my skill set is looking at problems and solving them, and doing research and making decisions that are using strategies that are supported by research, right? What is the best evidence-based strategy on how to address maybe certain deficiencies in academic excellence? Christopher, could you remind me of the second part of your question? Professional development, correct?
Oh, that's correct.
And that would be the same thing. I know that we have late starts, and I know that there's professional development opportunities. I've talked to Jan Allman, and she's told me, that the professional development in Mason is extraordinary compared to other districts. I'd love to investigate that more and find out what are other districts doing, what exactly is Mason doing, and how does that compare? And maybe also talk to teachers, right? It's one thing to say that this is the professional development, but are they finding it worthwhile as well, right? Kind of the retrospect from their perspective. Are they getting the exact professional development that they need? So it would really be digging into a topic and researching it. And I think that's something that I excel at. And I would add that, those are the academic excellence part is part of the mission statement or the vision statement of Mason Public Schools. So obviously that's critical, is that we make sure we're doing that. That's our first responsibility as a school district.
Okay, Michael, in addition to the what you've already mentioned, what quality, skills, and experience would you bring to the board?
Well, I think I mentioned this a little bit earlier. I think number one, I've got a proven track record of collaboration. Everything that I've done, whether it be my teaching career or now my career in educational technology, has been part of a team and collaborating, working with others, identifying, somebody's good at this, how can I fit in? Well, I've got this quality and these skill sets, and I bring this to the table. So communication and being open and asking questions, and really hoping to have a full participation of everybody on the board, as well as working with administration. And I think looking at whatever the topic might be, I think I do due diligence in terms of my research, going to find the experts in that field, whatever that might be, and reading about what their recommendations are for the best strategies, and bringing that up and seeing how those are being implemented. So that would go for topics of education or things that I've talked passionately about to you as a board, and public comment on the reopening and reimagining committee, my interest in ventilation, right? As a board, you did a tremendous job by investing in enhancements to the HVAC and ventilation in all our school buildings. Well, now it's time to test that, right? It's time to systematically and scientifically monitor that air and to see if we're actually getting return on investment. Okay, so we spent this money, now is it doing what we thought it would do? That's just an example in terms of collaborating and working with others. And I also think I bring professionalism, right? I having watched board meetings, I've kind of seen divisions, right? And sometimes, unfortunately, it's a little bit personal, right? When discussions have been heated. Hopefully that won't continue in the coming future. I want to be part of the solution. So I would certainly hope that as 6 board members, if you think you can work together with me effectively, I would hope you would select me. I would hope that would be, your choice is whoever you think as a board you'd be able to work cohesively with. And also strategic planning. I just think that's something that I'm good at, sort of high-level directions for where we're going, ways to evaluate that. Potentially that includes rubrics. What are the objectives, right? Kind of, taken enough training and, what's a good teaching learning objective and how do you evaluate that? You need to teach to it and assess to it. The same kind of idea could be taken towards policies that the board enacts, right? Okay, we've enacted this policy. How are we going to evaluate whether this policy is being hit over the lifetime of that policy? Hopefully that answers your question. And for any of these, if you have any follow-up, please ask me.
Okay, Michael Patrick here. Mine is the longest question, so I'll repeat it if you need me to. And the question is, identify a recent board decision that you felt strongly about and describe how you would balance community concerns, student needs, state and federal law, staff considerations, and your personal values and beliefs to determine how to vote on the issue. And again, I can repeat that if you'd like.
Please do.
Okay. Identify a recent board decision that you felt strongly about and describe how you would balance community concerns, student needs, state and federal law, staff considerations, and your personal values and beliefs to determine how to vote on the issue.
Well, the first example that comes to mind, I don't know how it plays with state and federal law, but I will tell you that I did listen to the meeting last week. And I thought it was interesting because one of the questions that was emailed to all of the 13 people was a question about consensus building and what it meant to you and how do you do consensus building. And as I listened to last Monday's meeting, when the 5 of you were deciding on which candidates to call back for further interviews, I thought it was very interesting that none of Mr. Kelly's nominations were called back, right? So here was somebody, one of the 5 people, who nominated 3 different people. Granted, they weren't on the list of any of the other 4, but he thought they were qualified candidates. And, Mr. O'Connor, you actually kind of alluded to that you did want to have a discussion with candidates, which I thought was more than appropriate. To me, how I would have voted last Monday would have been to bring all those people forward. Relating to the community, I think that's only fair because this is, this is a person, this is an interim position being selected by you, the board, to finish out Mr. Beebe's term. So it's not an election. So being as open and inclusive as possible seems very reasonable. Yes, it would have taken much more of your time, but at the same time, I think it would have been, that would have been representative of the community because, these were people from the community that were selected. I don't know how that really plays into the state law, but that's the first thing that comes to mind. I mean, the most recent decision that sticks out, obviously would have been the meeting at the end of August with the vote for masking. And to me, that would have been a no-brainer yes, because it was inevitable what was going to happen. If that wasn't enacted, there's no way we would have been able to keep the number of students in school. So in terms of state laws, there's no state laws with a public health situation. From a perspective of the community and the staff, that's what we have to do. It's a public health emergency. You have to protect other people, your individual rights in a public health emergency. You have to give in a little bit. So really, Patrick, that's the best I can come up with off the top of my head.
Thank you.
Hi, Michael. This is Liz Evans. What do you think are the most important skills for students to have when they graduate?
Great question. Well, first and foremost, right, basic reading, writing, and math skills. But I think being able to express yourself, both orally and written, is huge, right? That's a skill that translates to so many aspects of employment, whether students are going on to college and university, or if they're going right into a job market. So communication skills are really important. Digital literacy, right? Being able to evaluate material that you Google. So I did it tonight. Was talking to some colleagues, and a random question came up: is a violin a fiddle? Are they the same instrument, right? I didn't know, and nobody knew. So I Googled it, and you have to evaluate those results, right? You don't immediately go to the sponsored link at the top. You have to look at the source materials. So I think what we're seeing is this idea of digital literacy and being able to look up information, but also know when you're looking at trusted content providers, right? And knowing what that difference is. So I think that's a real important skill. Furthermore, I think the pandemic has shown just some of the confusion over basic science skills as well, right? Being able to have some working knowledge of basic science, the scientific process, how research works, and things like that, to be able to evaluate information that is presented to you. Collaboration, right? I think another big skill is the ability to collaborate together. I can't really think of many occupations where collaboration isn't an important skill. I know that's one of the things that, as somebody who's involved sometimes in looking for new employees, is that we prize people that have collaborated and can work together, right? Can value the opinions of other people, differences, and kind of work within that framework, still working towards shared goals. And I think the other goals is this changing worldview, right? The importance of diversity and inclusiveness and equity. The world is changing, and it's changing at a rapid pace. And we need to realize that there's a whole world that is much more diverse outside of the Mason community, outside of mid-Michigan, and students need to be ready for that, because through their lifetime, that's going to be something that consistently changes. So knowing how to appreciate people with different religious views, different sexual views, and political views, right? And being able to, again, collaborate. And those are some of the skills that come to mind as, real immediate.
Okay, thanks, Michael. Question for you, something we've faced a lot lately. I know you understand this one, but describe your response if a parent would corner you at the grocery store and ask you for your support for a particularly hot issue. How do you handle that confrontation?
Well, that's interesting. Number one, it's my understanding that whoever is picked does receive some introductory training, right, to what it is to actually be on a school board, and receive some training about those kind of instances. That was actually one of the examples that was, I had a conversation with the superintendent, and he mentioned, like, oh, in this training, you learn all kinds of things. And one of them is how to handle a situation somewhat like that. My first thing would be to listen to the person, to hear them out, to ask some questions to better understand where they're coming from, right? And have a conversation with them. It probably would also involve me giving them another way to communicate with me, because maybe time is short to some degree in the grocery store for both of us. But I would definitely listen and ask them to follow up. Maybe I would also get their contact information so I could follow up, and then I would investigate, right? I would start asking questions to other board members. Maybe it would be appropriate to ask one of the committee chairs for that topic where that falls under. And maybe if it's something very specific to something that happened in school, I would start with the superintendent and ask some questions and see where that goes. I think it would maybe depend on the scenario. But certainly, the whole idea of the board is representing ideas of the community and thoroughly vetting those, right? And seeing whether there is actionable item and listening to the experts. I think that would be something else I would stress is just the idea that I would research that topic, that policy item that the parent is concerned about and see what are evidence-based strategies for dealing with that.
Great, thank you. Patrick?
Yeah, one more question from me, Michael, and this is the question that's been asked to everyone. We have 3 high caliber candidates here tonight that we'll be meeting with. Why are you the one? Why should I vote for you?
I hope you vote for me if you think I'm part of the solution. I really think I already answered this question. I am not running an election. I am not campaigning for this position. There was an immediate need for somebody to step in and help the community. And frankly, I think help the school board. So I would say if you, Mr. O'Connor, and any of your colleagues think that I'm somebody that you can work with for all of my previous responses about collaboration and strategic planning and innovative and asking questions about, okay, well, we've always done it this way. What about this other way? If you think those are things you value, then I think you should vote for me because I think what we want is a school board that is functioning well together to really make sure that we're hitting all of those points in the district's vision statement, in the right at the top of the website where Mason Public Schools has its mission statement. That's the goal. So choose me if you think you're looking for somebody who is professional, logical thinker, strategic thinker, can collaborate with others, and also is not afraid to ask, have we thought about doing it this way?
Thank you.
Any other questions? Everybody good? All right. Thanks, Michael, for jumping on Zoom tonight and joining us. Really appreciate you being part of this process. Again, we've got 3 great candidates tonight. We've all had, will say for myself, I have thoroughly involved or enjoyed your involvement over the last 18 months with a lot of the issues. You've been a valuable resource to a lot of us. So, again, thanks for being part of the process, and you're going to be able to stay on with us. I think we're going to kind of go into discussion here. You're going to stick with us? Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Now the hard part, the real hard part. So I'll go ahead and start out. I wasn't here at the last meeting. So I guess let me just kind of start by saying to everybody, again, thank you, really. This has been very challenging times in the community, and for 3 people of this quality to step up and raise their hand saying they want to be part of it is impressive, to say the least. Everything from your written answers to the questions to your interviews tonight, I've been thoroughly impressed with all 3 of you. Michael and Matt I've known. Amy, I don't know you, but very impressive. It's tough. I'll honestly say you could put 3 names in a hat and draw one. I'd be happy with any of them. I'd be honored to serve with any of you. But that's probably not the best way to go about this. And so, you know, I'll also say, you know, again, you know, watching you answer those questions tonight, there's 2 board members, Steve and myself, both joined this board through appointment originally, and we've sat in that hot seat. We know what it's like. So, well done. You know, we can only pick one, but I'd be thrilled to see all 3 names on the ballot next fall. I think would bring great value to this community and to this board and to our school district, and help us steer it for years into the future. I couldn't be more excited about seeing everybody on the ballot. And so that kind of leaves us with, where do we do now? Again, I wasn't here last week, wasn't part of the discussion, and so as hard as this is, I will start by putting in my 2 cents for what it's worth, and we can go from there. You know, it's a very fine line between candidates, in my opinion. They're again, like I said, I'd be honored to serve with any of you, but I can't do that. I got to pick one, and so for me to make a decision, I have to start going through and saying, you know, advantages, disadvantages, strengths, weaknesses. And it's hard. It's really hard. And so I had some opinions coming in. You guys challenged some of them. But at the end, I don't think I changed my mind from the written answers and from my experience before. And I guess personally, I would lean towards Matt myself. It really the defining factor between, you know, candidates. I know, you know, Matt's been involved for so long, been in the community a long time, and you know, you may say that matters or it doesn't matter, but I think he casts a pretty wide net in this community and with a lot of people. And Amy, not yet, but you will. And Michael, boy, I tell you what, Michael's been so involved in this last 18 months, and I know if I don't vote for him, or if he doesn't get it, he will still be involved in this process with us. And you know, maybe his probably the fact that he answered that he isn't necessarily looking to run maybe skewed my decision a little bit. I think that if we bring somebody in, I really want them to have a passion to run at the next election, especially with the number of seats we're going to have open. You know, we all know how long it takes to get up to speed with what we do. I mean, it's not, you don't just jump in and start. I remember thinking that for the first 2 years I was lost. And so it'd be nice to see some consistency between who we bring in that would run and come back again. So I guess I don't know how I say that another way without offending anybody or you know, it's just those fine things, and that's where I would stand. So again, not being here last week and hearing all the discussion, I figured I'd start out, and then I'm all ears at this point. So.
I'll jump in. Kurt, I generally agree with you. That's more or less where my reasoning is as well. You know, I am highly impressed with Dr. Lark's background and pedigree. I think, though, that we have to be careful as a board. We're appointing a seat. We're not voting as a part of the community on what we think the community would be best. The community will decide that come next fall. I think at this point, I want to focus on a person I think who can get up to speed quickly, who can contribute quickly, who understands a lot of what's going on already. And that narrows me initially to Mr. Hall and Mr. Coate. And then from there, the fact that Mr. Coate is not as committed to the idea of the long-term relationship seat on the board leans me then more toward Mr. Hall again, because like you say, you spend a lot of time initially learning how to be good at this process, right? I mean, I still ask you questions. I'm like 2 years in between the two things, and I'm still trying to figure out how to best be, you know, effective in this role. And, you know, there's all the MASB classes that you're going to invest money, you're going to invest time in. It's always better if we can extend that investment forward as long as possible. And so that's where I'm landing on Mr. Hall tonight for filling our vacancy.
Other thoughts, please?
I'll speak just for a second. Yeah, my opinion hasn't changed from last time, and we've talked about the 3 candidates because the decision tonight is from the 3. But honestly, 14 people that are part of our community expressed interest and sent us information. One was not a resident of the district, so 13, and there's a lot of ways to pick apart the decision we made last week to get down to 3, but it wasn't easy. I mean, we turned away someone that works for NASA, for Pete's sake. They didn't make it to tonight. And the folks that we have tonight, we have multiple PhDs, an attorney, and an engineer that we have left. So it's, very well educated and the gamut, right? We have some folks that might have been, stay-at-home moms or dads and various respectable positions in the community. It's amazing we had that much interest, and I'm still convinced that everyone doesn't know what they were getting into necessarily, but thrilled that we had this great candidate pool to learn more about. And Amy Lark, didn't know you existed. I'm so thrilled that we do now. And I hope we're going to see and hear from you a lot more if you're not selected tonight, because when we got your name, I mean, seriously, we looked around, we talked, and we're like, does anyone know this person? We talked to principals at the middle school. They did not know you yet. They will now. I think we're all going to, whether you're selected tonight or not. I'm excited about that. Michael wasn't at the grocery store necessarily, but he certainly approached me plenty of times to give his opinion and suggestions on how I could do things differently. And again, tonight on our decision last week, not afraid to give his opinion. I'd lean the same way I did last week. Matt and I are not going to agree on lots of things too. Reproductive health is one of them. However, he's always respectful. He's always thoughtful. He does his homework, and he's polite, and I think he can work with other folks. He has multiple kids in the district. He's been here a long time. And we're talking about 15 months, and then hopefully longer for whoever we select. So my opinion's the same as last week. We have great applicants. I think we know what we're getting with Matt Hall, and we know that he would be a complementary part of the board. And so that's where I'm also leaning tonight. But I agree, great people, great candidates that I want to learn more about for next fall too.
Others, please?
I think to be fair to all the candidates, do any of us really know what we're going to do at the end of our terms? Okay. Can we all know what we're going to do at the end of our terms? I think I look at this as something that we have an opportunity to address, to discuss and look at the needs and consider the needs that we have now as a school board. And I think each of these candidates, as well as the ones, all that we looked at last week, each one, I spent a lot of time looking at each candidate and trying to understand, weaknesses are easy to find, but you got to do a little digging to identify strengths, and I think that holds true in a lot of situations. For me, each one of these candidates that we talked with tonight clearly has the drive and the passion. I think that Mr. Coate, has demonstrated particularly valuable decision-making processes that I think are very valuable to us with our current issues, upcoming issues, and particularly with strategic planning. That's something that I've always, we've been putting that off. That's an important, task that we undertake. And that is upcoming, and I think that is important. And looking at from that point of view, I think that Michael would be a very good candidate for our needs right now.
Liz,
I'll go ahead
Patrick?
and go. It looks like I turned mine on before Patrick
Go ahead.
did. So I guess I'll echo, honored to be able to have the folks in front of us this evening and to have all those that turned everything in. It was amazing to see the support in the community and folks willing to give of the next year and a half to learn and help the community. I will say that I still support my decision from last week as well. That just looking at being able to hit the ground running as quick as possible with the readiness for what all we have in front of us as a board. I also would encourage and hopefully see Dr. Lark and Mr. Coate if he chose to in a year and a half to run, but I would absolutely support Matt this evening as well.
Okay, well, again, I'd like to thank everybody for being a part of this. Again, I made the motion, so I felt sort of this burden but I think this is a healthy exercise. And I hope one thing that we do, Liz, I know you're chair of the policy committee, so I'll throw a challenge at you. Maybe in the future we can look at that policy for replacement, and maybe we can have some sort of a template developed that allows us to do this. I've not been a part of the past appointments, and I know in the past it's been like, nobody wanted to be on the school board, but it seems like the enthusiasm's up, and to call this and to gather this caliber of people, plus the others that we weren't able to talk to face who applied, I think was impressive. I think is very good for the school district, and I think is healthy for Mason Public Schools in the long term. So that said, I have worked with Michael Coate as we've proceeded through this pandemic thing. He's been, I guess, an advisor, unwritten, unofficial friend. I like, by the way, that he also did some JV baseball PA announcing, which shows dedication to the community. I actually did that too, so we have that in common. He's been on the baseball board. So great service, great strategic thinker. Matt, I don't know as well, but I've had great conversations with Matt along the way. I do think he's a Mason kind of guy. I just saw on Facebook the other day he did something and helped a neighbor on some sort of project. I didn't read it quick enough, but there were pictures of Matt working hard, helping a neighbor. So everybody's great. The interesting one in the mix here is Amy Lark. I have been intrigued since I saw her resume for a couple of reasons. One is a woman who is a PhD in education. And hearing her, looking at her responses, this has been a horse race all the way through, and I'm just going to say, looking at her responses, listening to her tonight, at the risk of offending two of my friends, Matt and Michael, and I think they understand this whole process, I would vote for Amy Lark. I think it would allow us to have a different flavor, a different feel to our board. I think that freshness might be needed, as we have 6 board members who have been embedded in the community for a long time, and we've heard a lot. It might be a really good time not to know a lot of people in the community, or to at least go out there and have a fresh look at the community. So Amy Lark would get my vote just by a nose, and by no means to offend or demean any of the energies that anyone else has put into this. So those are my thoughts.
Well, I could resign and one other, and we could let all 3 in.
Can I mention one other thing before we get to the vote? And this is something Michael had mentioned. I will not be running for school board next year. This will be my last term, so there is opportunity. Certainly, it'll leave a giant vacancy in this board, a huge hole, hard to replace. But that said, I encourage anyone who has been a part of this process to please get involved. It's been very satisfying. I'm not done yet, but I'm just giving you the heads up. I think in July you have to put in your paperwork, so be aware of that. And watch me for the next month to learn exactly how to be a great school board member. So just I wanted to add that tonight is not the end for people on this thing, regardless of where we vote.
Agreed. Thanks, everybody. Great feedback. It's got to be strange sitting out in the audience listening us to review you or critique you or whatever you want to say. It doesn't usually work that way in interviews. It's behind closed doors, but it's part of transparency of being on the board. So Again, thank you, and I guess at this point, if somebody wants to make a motion, and then we can have further discussion at that point if we want.
I'd like to make a motion to appoint Matt Hall as trustee to the Board of Education as presented.
Support.
Moved and supported. Any further discussion?
I just wonder, for the sake of appearance, if I'm supposed to be voting against this or not. So, I mean, it'd be nice to have a unanimous or close to unanimous vote, but I just, maybe I shouldn't have asked out loud. I think my vote will reflect.
You vote however you want to
my
vote.
vote
I
will
don't think.
reflect that this is not the candidate that I had suggested, but I want to sit next to whoever our next school board member is and work well with them, and it's nothing personal, and I think that everyone will understand that. Thanks.
I think they will. Yes. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Or, I'm sorry, roll call. Roll call on this one, yes.
All right. Start off myself. Ms. Evans, yes. Mr. O'Connor?
Nay. No.
Mr. Creamer?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
No.
Mr. Mumby?
Yes.
And Mr. Dwayne?
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
4-2.
4-2. Twice I messed that up tonight. 4-2, motion carries. So congratulations. And again, thanks to everyone. I believe our procedure was going to be at the next board meeting to do swearing in. We're going to do it right now.
Yep.
All right, we are going to go through the swearing in process right now. So Mr. Hall, if you'd like to come on up. Assuming you accept. That's fine. She probably ask you to stand there.
Okay, I have you all do solemnly swear that I will support the School Board of Education, Constitution of the United States, and Constitution, sorry. Right there, I already messed that up. So I, Matthew Hall, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States, the constitutions of this state, and I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office as a member of the Board of Education of Mason Public Schools according to the best of my ability.
I guess congratulations. We'll send you the agenda. Start blocking off your calendar. At this point, any further public comment? Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Support. Moved and supported. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. We are adjourned at 8:35.